what's happened? You tell me.
I tell you,
Break it down for me.
Apparently 2020 has affected some DC people.
Yeah, it's been a no good, very bad week for DC comics.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Especially when the DC fandom is coming up in a few days?
This week, yes.
This week, yeah.
We are recording this on Sunday, August 16th, 2020. For those of you, in case we make any dated references or you don't understand what's going on, we're recording it on that date. So now,
Yes.
Fandom is the big DC brouhaha, since nobody's allowed to do Comic-Cons this year because Rona.
And there's a huge list of stars, plans, everything that's going to be happening over DC fandom. But we also had a bunch of layoffs. About a third of DC has had layoffs. Well, permanent layoffs. Basically, people out of the job. Period.
What happened was there'll be plenty of celebrities at Fandom, but there's not going to be as many DC people at it because AT&T needs to make a debt payment, and so a third of DC's management, 20% of their writers and artists, all been let go. A third of the DC Universe staff has been let go, so you can pretty much kiss DC Universe goodbye, because they're already having all their stuff migrated over to HBO Max. So if you're a fan of DC Universe, probably need to start getting ready for the changeover. But
that means I'll have to get HBO Max now.
Which means if you have a Roku or an Amazon Fire on your TV that you're streamed through, you're still SOL, because still no HBO Max or Peacock on either one. Because they still haven't reached an agreement on profit sharing from ad revenue and stuff like that. But
still sucks.
From what I'm seeing, they've canceled a bunch of books over at DC. Teen Titans is gone. Young Justice is gone. Suicide Squad is gone, thank God, because that one was poorly executed. Hellblazer is gone, and Hawkman, along with a bunch of others. And quite frankly, I haven't kept up with any of them. I know that Harley Quinn is in Suicide Squad, so I have paid zero attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand from a business point of view, get rid of stuff that nobody wants, like certain merchandising ideas. Like nobody wants, to see Superman and Batman wearing some type of really stupid outfit that makes no sense to their characters, which happens a lot.
They're still threatening Black Batman, so that was supposed to be part of the 5G thing, was Black Batman. Black Man. Which is idiotic. Come up with your own characters, y'all.
Yeah.
Honestly. Stop the race lifting. Because, okay, we've gone over race lifting before, right? On this show, we've discussed what race lifting is.
Sex changing, racism,
sex changing,
everything.
You're doing that, okay. You take an existing character and you change their race, or you change their sex, or you change their gender, or you change their sexual orientation. Let me explain exactly what that communicates. You are trying to appeal to a niche audience. Okay, if you're doing a race lift, you are by definition going for a minority audience. Okay, what you're telling the minority is you're too lazy to come up with an original character. What you're going to do is take an existing character, color him black instead of white. Ta-da! Here's your black superhero here.
Or take a character that is either female or black, and that nobody really talks about, like, for instance, Static X, or is it? Yeah, Static X? Static Shock.
Static Shock, yeah.
Static Shock. Perfect example. Kind of like Peter Parker and the whole Spider-Man thing. Static Shock would have been a perfect Spider-Man-ish for the DC.
Out of all the Milestone things, we'll talk about Milestone here in a second, but out of all the Milestone properties, that's the one that's shown legs. But why in the hell nobody has resurrected Blood Syndicate, at least for HBO Max? You want to talk about multicultural thing. Milestone Media was founded back in the early 90s. The idea was it was created by minority creators, owned by minority owners, and distributed by DC Comics.
Yeah.
Blood Syndicate had, I'm struggling here, I think they had 2 black characters, 2 Hispanic characters. They had a dog, they had a transgender, and 1 Chinese national, and I believe there was a couple of others that I can't think of right now. Either way, that's as multicultural pals as they come. And it was all built into their character because they made references, cultural references, that were separate for each one. So it's not just a paint job. Nobody said it yet, okay? We're going to start a new segment on this show. It's going to be called Nobody's Called It Yet, okay? And I'm going to be the first one to call it. You ready?
Okay,
You ready for this?
Go
Okay.
for it.
I'm going to get myself in trouble doing this stuff, okay? We call it race lifting now. I'm going to call it the new blackface. It's a matter of time. Somebody on the left is going to call it the new blackface. And they're absolutely right, because that's exactly what race lifting is. It's a minstrel show. You take something white, you put blackface on it, and pass it off as being black.
Yeah.
Okay? They made, in the comic books right now, Shazam, Captain Marvel, not Marvel Captain Marvel, DC Captain Marvel. Shazam is Hispanic. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
No, because nobody's been reading that book. Face paint is what it is.
But, I mean, that's the thing that really gets me is like, well, I mean, you know, you can actually look at some characters and be like, I don't care what they do with that character. Like, I'm a big Batman fan.
Mhm.
And honestly, if they decide to make Batman an African American, that doesn't actually bother me, none at all. But it would bother me if they took Superman and changed him into an African American for some reason.
There was,
I don't know why.
There was a series. I need to sit down and I need to read it. I've never gotten around to actually reading this. It was from Marvel. It was done years ago. It was a Captain America storyline called Red, White, and Black. Okay?
Right.
The idea here, and this, I thought this was an awesome idea. I actually popped when I heard it. The idea is Steve Rogers was not the first one to get the super soldier serum. Okay?
Right.
Alright. He got the perfected version of the serum. But they had to test it on somebody, so they went to the Tuskegee Institute and tried it out on black men first. Now the version just before the one Steve Rogers got, he was the lone survivor of that entire experimental program. This is a black man in the 1940s with all the powers. He has the enhanced speed, the enhanced strength, the enhanced reflex, all that stuff. He has all the enhanced abilities of Captain America, but he's black.
I got you.
Now, here is the hilarious part, and I believe they actually worked this into the storyline, which, like I said, I've still got to review this. Scott, if you're watching this, put me down for a copy of Red, White, and Black, if you can ever find it. It's a Captain America thing. Anyway, in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force at the time, in World War II, the military brass wanted all the services desegregated.
No.
Because they didn't, you had to work as a cohesive unit, you had to get every resource available, so they did not want to, anybody who would, white or black, who came in and tried to instigate racial trouble would get their chops busted for it.
Yeah.
It was FDR, good old New Deal himself, who despised black people and insisted that the divisions be racially divided. They had to be segregated, or FDR would throw the generals into the sea and find new generals who would do what he wants.
Oh.
So it was him, and I believe they actually worked that into that. So anywho, it can be done right if you put some thought into it. But
It can be. I mean, I just don't understand why they take characters and do that with when there's characters that already exist. Just make them more popular so the audience will shut up. Basically. Like I said, even Blue Beetle. Wasn't he Hispanic?
Yes, in the third version he was.
Okay, well, Blue Beetle, Hispanic.
That was actually
Static
that was
Shock.
actually very well done.
Yeah,
the Blue
I mean,
Beetle
they
transformation.
were really good.
Because Ted Kord was killed off, which I disagreed with. That was the second Blue Beetle. He was a white guy. He was a rich white guy. He was basically Batman, but with more gadgets, if you can believe that. But it was the Jamie Reyes was the third Blue Beetle, and he was the one who actually got the Beetle Scarab that Ted Kord carried around all the time. He's the one who got the Scarab to work, and that's when they made him more of a cosmic intergalactic character. And all of a sudden, and that's the one I think most people identify Blue Beetle with to this day, is Jamie Reyes, and should be, because it's a well done character.
Exactly, and Static Shock and Blue Beetle are two amazing stories that can be told, but nobody pays attention to them. But if DC wants to, have that culture change that is going on, what better way than to take characters that is already African American, already Hispanic, already female, whatever, and put it out there.
DC needs to get off their butts and finish the Milestone Project. The Milestone Project has been in the works now for 4 years. I think they've been fighting Dan DiDio and a couple other people at DC trying to get it done. Basically, they're going to resurrect the entire Milestone line. Now, how well they're going to be able to get it done with AT&T now wanting their tribute and stuff like The Godfather, I don't know. But how did we get from DC's No Good, Very Bad Day to talking about Jamie Reyes, the third Blue Beetle?
Yeah, I have
no
idea.
Wow, we wander far afield. Anywho.
That's what we do.
Now the scuttlebutt online is that AT&T is wanting. They're actually recruiting people from esports. That's where you sit around and watch other people play video games.
Yeah.
People are actually good at it. They're going to take people from esports, like producers and stuff, bring them in to DC Comics to serve in an editorial fashion to help improve the marketing, the distribution, the execution of the plans, come up with a game plan. And I know a lot of people in the industry are losing their minds over this idea. But what's one of the rules? I have 3 rules. What's one of them?
Everything's been done before.
It's all been done before.
He always reminds me of this.
Back in the mid-70s, DC Comics went through this with, of all things, the Kinney Shoe Corporation. Kinney Shoes bought Warner Brothers, bought DC Comics. Okay? So, actually, I think Kinney Shoes bought DC first, and then they bought Warner. I believe. It's something like that. They wound up merging the two. So, DC in 1975 saw that they had Kinney Shoes and they had Warner Brothers, and they're like, hey, we got a blank check. We can do anything we want. So that's when the so-called DC explosion hit, and all these brand new titles came out. And Kinney Shoes said, no you don't, we're taking the checkbook back. That's led to the DC implosion of 1976 when all these books were canceled, and a few more besides to make up the difference. And in 1977, they installed new leadership. Somebody who wouldn't see a blank check and go running off with it. And that's when they hired Jeanette Kahn. Jeanette Kahn became the publisher of DC 76, 77, in that area. She was with Scholastic Books and had created the kids magazine Dynamite. Nobody thought about kids reading magazines and stuff unless they were comic books or like highlights for children. She's the one who came up with a pop culture magazine for kids. And it sold like gangbusters. Even I read the thing. And she wound up getting the head spot at DC for it. If it wasn't for Jeanette Kahn, we would not have had the Crisis on Infinite Earths. We would not have had The Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, Hellblazer, the new Teen Titans, all these Batman things, the Batman the Animated Series. We wouldn't have any of those things if it wasn't for Jeanette Kahn. So bringing an outsider in can work because they're going to come in not knowing what the industry is prejudiced against, and they're going to go ahead and try to do it, and it's going to work. And all of a sudden all the scales and the rust is going to be shaken off. DC could come out of this a lot leaner and meaner. So DC may not necessarily disappear, and if there's anybody at AT&T with two brain cells to clack together, you listen to Jim Lee. Do not do away with the publishing, because that's where your new franchises come from. I know they're not doing a very good job of building any here recently, but it doesn't mean it can't work. As in Milestone, as in the reestablishment of the JSA.
Yeah.
All this other stuff. Hang on and see, but anyway.
Hopefully.
The other thing would be Marvel. Marvel's got to be crap in their drawers right now, because Disney is cash starved from all reports, and Disney's going to be looking at how much money AT&T's saving off of this and be like, hey, why don't we try that?
Well, I mean, you know, it's one thing to have something that goes off the rails and become huge, but it's another thing then to take that property and start doing all kinds of different things with that. Mm-hmm. And it's like you can go on Disney XD, and there's all kinds of different types of Spider-Mans. There's all kinds of different types of the Avengers now, and it's just like, okay, you know, you're putting too much into one thing.
Well, on the other hand, you can have a character, if the character is influential enough, if it's big enough, it can start applying to different, you can have niche followings for certain interpretations. I, for example, absolutely adore the Brave and the Bold cartoon series. That was where Batman teamed up with somebody new every week. It was a little goofy, a little campy, kind of like the 1966 version, but it was fun from start to finish,
Right.
and didn't last nearly long enough. And, I mean, just look at Batman. You've got Batman 66, which is the Adam West version. You have the Dark Knight Detective from like the early 70s, which was like Jim Aparo and Denny O'Neil and all these guys. And then you had the Dark Knight version that was started by Frank Miller, the Year One version with David Mazzucchelli, and you've had all these others. You have the jerk-ass Batman we got now. All these different interpretations of Batman, and guess what? They're all Batman. They're all recognizable as Batman, but Batman has become strong enough, big enough, that people are interpreting it in different ways. There's nothing wrong with that.
True.
And it's not to say you put blackface on Batman and think it's... Because we already have one in what's called Batwing. It was out there for about a year as part of the New 52. It was a black Batman-sponsored Batman, part of Batman Incorporated, which was an idiotic idea. But anyway, but that was the African version of it. That went over well. That just changed the bar right there. But anyway. So what do you think? Now, you're not so much... You haven't been watching the industry for 30 years like I have. What do you think? On the outside looking in, you see DC's lost a third of their editors, 20% of their staff. DC Universe has lost a third of all their staff, period. What are you thinking about DC right now?
I'm worried about the comic book industry. That it's all going to be digital and no more just paper. Worried about that. I'm worried about some... just too much change, and you know, like how we talked, like, you know, it's like changing things, turning this guy into a female to make people happy and stuff like that, you know, that type of change. They haven't said what they're going to do. I'm afraid that that's what's going to happen, and I don't want that.
I think what happens to the industry, let me be Karnak here and pull out my crystal ball. We pull out my little envelopes and hold it to my head. If the industry is smart, they're going to understand your average comic book now costs $5. That's untenable. Okay? Kids have more money now than they did when I was a kid, unfortunately. But they're still not going to drop $5 is either one comic book or it's a month of Hulu. Which one are you going to go with? I can read 2 comic books in a month, or I can get a month of Netflix. Which one am I going with? I can get 3 comic books, or I can get a month of HBO Max, and I can watch all these skin flicks and stuff that my parents knowing, because HBO doesn't verify age identities very well. But I digress.
Donald Trump don't trust China. China is asshole.